Let's go about 20 years back in your life.
Right.
When you started getting these revelations and the psychic told you these things and you started researching by yourself and you start talking about it. How was it? How was it to deal with your family and your friends and your surroundings and, I mean, the ridicule that so many people are going to face? I have experienced in my own way because of different circumstances. How did you act upon this, and how was it?
Well, pretty much, you know, when you are faced with a tidal wave hitting you almost overnight, you just have to deal with what you are faced with, because it's almost not a case of I'm going to say this and this might be the consequence, because I went on a primetime chat show called The Wogan Show in 1991, and in 15-16 minutes became instantly the most ridiculed man possibly in British bloody history. I couldn't go anywhere without being laughed at. I couldn't go to a bar or anything like that. They'd just uproar. A comedian just had to say my name, no joke necessary, to get a laugh. And it was just, immediately, I'd stepped into a completely different world, because before that I was a respected television presenter and all that stuff. And my family, to their credit, clearly did not understand anything that was going on. And neither did I. My life had just changed dramatically. And the status quo was now not an option. The old life was over. All bridges were burned back to there. But to their great, great credit, they stuck with me because they were my children and I was their husband. And a lot of people would have walked away. And when you ask the question there about friends, a lot of friends did walk away. I mean, it was like, I didn't really know him, you know. But I came to the very strong feeling that for some reason, this mass ridicule I was going through was not happening by accident. There was a reason for it happening. And I concluded that I was going to keep going with this despite all the enormous ridicule, because I just instinctively, intuitively felt it was going somewhere. In terms of my family, I came to the point where I thought, when they leave the body, they are going to understand, this is back 21 years ago, they're going to understand why all this happened. I don't have to concentrate and focus on trying to explain to them why it's happening now. I'm just going to go with this and see where it goes. But what has happened 21 years later is that events have unfolded, and my family at that time, who were still absolutely with me, all of them, they have now seen why that happened with the passage of time. And it may sound strange that a period of massive ridicule, and ridicule of your children at school as well, they went through that a lot more than I realized at the time, is an important part of your life that you wouldn't change. But it's true, because of this reason. We, when I say we, I mean the mind-body level of us goes through a symbolic journey from the womb to what we call death. It's just leaving this world, that's all. Which is, if you like, symbolic of a river going from the source to the sea. The mind can only see at any point in time the next turn on the river. This is the thinking level that's trying to work it out, what's happening now, which channel do I go down in the maze next, and all this stuff. But there's another level of us, which I call consciousness, the infinite part of us, that actually can see the journey from source to sea. And what is a terrible thing happening to mind here is actually to consciousness an essential experience that's leading to these great things here. And although I experienced all the ridicule without realizing why, I just knew there was a reason for it, but I didn't know why. Now I look back and I see why. It's because as the years have unfolded and I've followed the trail of information, it's taken me into places where I'm talking about reptilian entities manipulating human society, the fact that they have the ability to move between human and reptilian form. In the last 18 months, I've been looking at the fact that the moon's not what we think it is and is actually having a fundamental effect on human awareness in a technological, calculated way, that without being cleared out here of the prison that most people live in, which is the fear of what other people think, by that mass ridicule. Because when I went through it, either I was going to disappear from society and just hide, or I was going to come out and say, laugh, this is me. If you don't like it, do the other thing, but this is me. And that's what I did. And so, having been through the most intense, extreme levels of ridicule over many years in the 90s, what would to most people be, I'm going to talk about reptilian entities, what will people think of me? Oh, I'm not saying the moon's not real, what people think of. To me, not a problem. My criteria for what I communicate is, do I think it's true? That's it. Do I have have I passed that line where I know this is true? Or at least the theme of it's true. Yes, okay, so it goes out there. There's no, oh, but what will people think of me? Because of that, I don't care. And it means that there is no censorship, no editing of what information I put together on the basis of whether I think people will see me in a certain light. I don't care. They have every right to see me as they want. And it's this free-flowing, information-guided, information criteria-guided journey of communication that is absolutely essential, because the world that we're experiencing is so dramatically different to that which we think we're experiencing, that if you have any preconceived idea or belief system to protect or to influence your sense of what is, then forget it. You are simply not going to, you're not going to let the information be the guide. You're letting preconceived idea or belief system be the guide, or protecting your belief system being the guide. For instance, in places like the United States, there are very large numbers of people who are investigating this global enslavement of humanity, but only in certain areas, like banking scams and engineered wars and engineered terrorist events and control of the media and all this stuff. And that's important, it's good, I'm not knocking it for a second, we need to know about that. But this is far, far bigger than that. And the rabbit hole goes much deeper than that. And that they won't go any deeper in the rabbit hole. Because if they do, suddenly, A, their religious, often mostly Christian belief system is going to be under threat, so they won't go there. And also, they're also looking that if I go any deeper in this rabbit hole and start talking about it, well, I'm going to get laughed at and dismissed and all the rest of it, so I'm not going there. So I'm going to stay at this level, which is fine, and that's good, and we need to know that. But we ain't going to find answers to the enslavement of humanity when we're only willing to investigate and communicate that tangible level that we can see, touch, and taste. Because the see, touch, and taste level of this is merely, if you like, it's the movie screen. It's the movie when it hits the screen. It's a done deal. It's happened. We've got to start investigating where this projection is coming from that's manifesting as this global conspiracy, because it's much, much deeper than just men in dark suits sitting around a table discussing their next move, which is basically the level that these people investigate on. So that ridicule period for me was absolutely crucial. What I would say to people for what has followed, who have kind of trepidation of speaking their truth, is, okay, so people laugh at you, yeah. Why do they laugh at you? Because they don't respect my right to have a different view from them. Absolutely. So why are you worried what people like that think of you? What's it matter? And the other thing is that, as I know this from long experience, they'll be thinking something else tomorrow. And so many people now are coming to my information because of what I've said before that is now playing out in the daily world. Now, if I had have let the fear of ridicule shut me up all those years ago, I'd have never have written those books. I'd have never have said those things. And then people would not be able to say now, hey, hold on a second, did that bloke say this was going to happen? And there's the thing a phrase I say to people a lot is that you can't unhear something. So when you speak your truth and people go, load of rubbish, you're mad, but they can't unhear what you have said. And if what you have said has any validity, it will eventually be shown to be so by things playing out as you said they will. This is what has happened to me. But unless you speak your truth and accept that, you know, people are going to dismiss it and ridicule it, though not so much now because it's playing out in the television news, then they're going to have nothing to hear that they can't later not unhear, and therefore see that the two go together, and what was said is actually what's happening, so I have to look at this a bit more seriously now. It's so important that we speak our truth, and you know, if our family don't like it, well, hold on a second, why do you have a problem with my speaking my truth, even though it's different to yours? I mean, why don't you respect my right to be what I am? Same with other people. And, you know, we think all the time that when we say something about someone, we are making a statement about them. But all the time when we make statements about others, we're actually making a massive statement about ourselves and our own state of being that makes us make that statement about someone else. And so those people that just laugh and ridicule and don't respect someone else's right to be different, well, they're just making a statement about themselves, not the person that they're targeting. It's very important that we don't concede to the fear of what other people think of us. Because if we do, and the vast majority of people in the world do, we are no longer from that moment on living our own lives. We're not living our own truth. We're not living our own genuineness. We're living someone else's version of what we should be. Now, if you want to be that, that's fair enough. I respect that. It's your choice. Just don't tell me how I'm going to live my life and what I'm going to think and what I'm going to say. Because you've crossed my line when you do that. And it's this fear of what other people think that makes people conform to very narrow boxes, which they don't even believe in, but they stay in them so that they are within, they are accepted by people around them. If people around me can't accept me because I'm different, well, I don't want them around me. Thank you very much. Bye.
When we talk about the world, or we talk about other people, something outside ourselves, we actually make a statement about ourselves.
Right.
Could you explain this a little?
Well, if I'm saying that I'm going to ridicule someone because they're saying something different to me, what I'm saying about myself is I have no respect for anyone else's view other than myself. I feel that, therefore, for me to dismiss this person without any research whatsoever, 99.999% of the time, I'm saying that I know what is right and what is not right about the world, and you don't. And of course, understanding the world is an ongoing process. And what it demands for that process to be ongoing is a constantly open mind that can look at all possibility and make judgments based on the information and the intuitive feeling about that, rather than preconceived idea, belief, which is editing reality all the time in a very limited way. Socrates in ancient Greece is supposed to have said, wisdom is knowing how little we know. When we operate from that point of view, our minds are constantly open. It does not mean we believe everything we hear, of course not. But it means we're open to all possibility. Once you start to think that you know what there is to know, to the point where you can ridicule anybody's other view being different, you have already closed your mind to all possibility and locked it around a tiny possibility. It might be a religion, it might be a scientific belief, it might be whatever. So we are making statements about ourselves all the time about what we do. When we say, you know, I'm not sure if what you say is right, mate, it seems a bit far out to me, but hey, you have a right to believe that, and I'll have a look at it, I'll have a look at it, I'll have a look at what you said and I'll see what I think. Then you're saying, I respect your right to have your view, I respect your right to be different. So the statements are being, every time we open our mouth, we're making a statement about ourselves.
The other thing I would like to talk about is a little about this fear versus love. I did a bicycling trip from the north of Jutland till India.
To India?
To India.
No wonder you look so bloody fit.
It took me 1 year and 1 month. And the main thing I realized during this trip and my 7 months of stay down there was that, and you talk about this as well, but I realized it from my own experience, and this makes a difference, I think, that people, I would say up till 95% of the people I know from my history and my life, they act because of fear.
Yes.
They are motivated because of they lose something, or that they don't get something, or that the ridicule is another example. And it goes on. And the question I wrote down here, or the thing I wrote down here was, can you explain how the symptoms of our media, politics, education acts out in our daily life with this?
Well, you've hit on the key point, really, in many ways. There is a reason why, through the media, politics and that which controls politics, which people don't see, and in all these different institutions, it's why they're always feeding people reasons to fear, reasons to feel insecure, reasons to worry, reasons to feel anxiety, to be ill at ease. There are many, many reasons for it, some of them very deep in the rabbit hole. But one of the key reasons is that people who are in fear of something overwhelmingly look outside of themselves for something or someone to protect them from what they've been manipulated to fear. What tends to happen when people are in fear is they give their power away. When people are in fear of illness, they give their power to the doctor. They're in fear of the law, they give their power to a lawyer. They're in fear of whatever, they'll give their power away to whoever they can protect them. And of course, what any control system run by the relatively few, the very few compared with the target population, whenever the few want to control the many, they have to do a number of things. Divide and rule the many, set the many at war with each other, but also they have to get the many to give their power to them. Because humans are controlled by a power structure that is powered by the energy, the power humans give away all the time. So we give our power away to politicians, we give it to doctors, we give it to scientists, we give it to journalists, the power to tell us what to believe and all this stuff. Fear is also a very dense, low vibrational, energetic state. And the more dense you become, it's like when people are in fear and anxiety, they say, oh, God, I feel so heavy today. That's the density of the energy. And that disconnects you from a powerful connection to higher vibrational levels of energy, where insight and creativity and awareness and intuitive knowing come from. Puts you in a bubble of dense energy. So when you're a control system and you want to control people individually and collectively, then keeping them in fear, energetically and in terms of giving their power away to people, the authorities, is absolutely essential. So, for instance, when you get people in fear of terrorism, then you give your power away to the authorities to take your basic freedoms away, to protect your freedoms from being taken away. They take your freedoms away. You give your power away to have more and more surveillance, more and more control of your life, more and more of the fine detail of your life being dictated by the state. You give your power away to support wars you say are necessary to fight terrorism, which are actually being carried out by the people fighting the wars. And it becomes a cycle of fear, give your power away, fear, give your power away. And in the end, the person is given so much power away, they're just a robot, just a computer terminal on the state's internet, if you like. But when you... another thing is that, I emphasize the difference between consciousness and mind. That they're all the same consciousness, but they're not in the same state of awareness. I symbolize consciousness, that infinite part of us, as a flowing ocean, and I symbolize mind as like frozen water. They're both water, symbolically, but they're in different states. One's much denser and less aware and less intuitive, less wise than the other. And when you are in a state of ocean consciousness, infinite awareness, you don't deal in states of fear, because there's nothing to fear. You're infinite awareness, and you'll always be infinite awareness, and that's as bad as it gets. But when you get pulled into the mind level, mind-body, like the interface level between consciousness and this reality, then it starts to see things not as wholes, but as things that are apart from everything else. And from that sense of everything being apart from everything else come the divisions to divide and rule, and comes fear and the need to compete and fight with people on different levels. And so to keep people in fear as well as ignorance, the system has to pull people's focus of attention out of consciousness into mind. And what we're living in is a mind-dominated society that basically filters reality almost entirely, certainly consciously, through the five senses, which are a very, very low level of awareness. And in focusing attention on the five sense level of reality alone, you disconnect an awareness and an influence of higher levels of consciousness. And when you expand your mind, when you open your mind, when you break open that block of ice, and it starts to flow and let consciousness in, then you go to levels of awareness where fear no longer dominates, no longer impacts itself. So you stop giving your power away. You stop. I know this is the right thing to do, but I can't do it because look what might happen. Fear. It's like when you enter those levels we call love. People think love is weak. Like, oh, he'll be doing the washing up next. He's talking about love now. What's he doing? But what love is actually the ultimate power. Because love will always do what it knows to be right, irrespective of the consequences. What do you mean, consequences? Do you mean I'm going to think about not doing what I know to be right because of consequences? No, you do what you know to be right. And this is when you enter these realms where you feel to do something, you feel to say something, you feel to make a difference in some way, and you just do it, and without fear of the consequences. So now the power that fear has to get you to concede your sense of reality and what you do to the state, to the system control. You no longer do that anymore. Love ain't interested in what the system's going to do. It's only interested in what it's right to do. And so this is why love, in its true sense, not, I love you, darling, saw you down the disco and all that stuff. Real love that says, I do what I know to be right, end of story, there is no other discussion. That's the level that is going to transform this world. Mind is not going to transform it, where people are sitting around tables saying, well, who's taking the minutes? Okay, so what are we going to decide? The mind is never going to bring an end to something that is mind-made. Consciousness is going to do that, and when you move into the realms of consciousness and out of mind, that's when you move out of the realms of fear and division and fault lines engineered to divide and rule us, and into both the true sense of love and also the understanding that actually what appears to mind to be loads of things apart from everything else, from this level, everything's one. Everything's just the same consciousness having a different experience called a different name.
If this vibrating or acting on or with or for love, it brings out creativity and it brings out new ideas, it brings out some might say evolution. Why did my teacher never talk about this in school? Why did my parents never talk about these things? Why is it not something that is a part of my educational life? I mean, I'm 24 now, and I went to school for almost 18 years. I mean, whole life almost.
Well, that's a very interesting question, because that's the question I asked 21 years ago. When I had my own amazing experiences, and I realized clearly that there was a whole new explanation for reality that wasn't the religious story and in all their forms, and certainly wasn't the mainstream scientific story. An explanation that made sense of the world that these two don't make sense of at all. I asked that question, why the heck haven't I come across this before? And as I've obviously gone through the years experiencing and researching how the system works, the answer to the question became very clear, because the whole system of institutions in every country is designed not to enlighten people, not to tap into their true potential, but to turn them into software programs that have a perception of self and the world that is narrow enough for them not to see what's happening, but wide enough for them to have the intelligence to serve the system in various ways. They want us to be intelligent enough to serve the system of control, but not intelligent enough to realize it is a system of control. So, if we think about it, you're sitting around a table and you're saying, you're manipulators, and you're saying, how can we get children at the earliest possible age and have control of what they're told is reality through like 5 days a week at least, from when they're little kids right through to their teenage years, so that we'll turn out adults overwhelmingly that see themselves and the world in the way that suits our control system. And someone might say, well, I don't know whether they'll accept this, but I'll tell you the best way. What if we set up a system, I know, let's call them schools and universities, and what we'll do is we'll take the kids away from their families as early as we can. It's right, 4 or 5 would be perfect. And then we will program them through a system of so-called education until, you know, they're closing in on their 20s. And we will then, not in all cases, but in a vast majority of cases, we will get the software program at the end of that process that we set out to get. And then you ask the question about parents. Well, parents, of course, have been through the same system I've just described. So therefore, through no malevolence, they think they're telling their children what is right and wrong and how things are. Where I strongly would challenge these people, people called parents, is where they believe that because they have, say, a religious belief system or any kind of belief system, by definition they have the right to impose that upon their children, often with great pressure, because that is an arrogance beyond belief. You know, you brought this expression of infinite awareness into an experience in this reality. Okay, thank you very much, but it's his experience, it's her experience, it's not yours. Oh, your mother wants you to work in a bank. Well, let me mother go and work in a bloody bank. And I'm not working in a bank. I'm going on a bike ride to India. Oh, where you go? Okay. I'm not asking you to go a bike ride to India, but just don't tell me to go and work in a bank. And this is where we have to, from the very earliest ages, is stand our ground, stand our uniqueness, and say, this is my uniqueness. I'm not asking it to be yours, but don't tell me that I'm going to live my life according to your blueprint. I'm not. Again, you know, you find this peer pressure in schools. The earliest ages, it's like a genetic software program reaction, where even little children will target the one who's different, and I've experienced it, and it's almost like it's in the genetics, it's in the software, but consciousness can overwhelm it. And what we are seeing now, there's no doubt about it, as I travel now, I've been to 55 countries so far, there is a dramatic awakening of people to another version of self. Not the whole massive expansion, but it's teasing out in ways that 21 years ago, when I started on this journey, you wouldn't believe would ever have happened. Because I talk to a lot of people now, or I talk around the world. I couldn't fill a phone booth for a long time with this information. So there is an awakening going on. There's no doubt about it. But it's so important that no matter how young we are, or whatever our ages, or whatever, that we stand our ground. And by that I mean we stand our truth. And the more people that do that, the more we'll realise how many actually are very sympathetic to this perception of reality, but have never dared say so before because they fear what other people think. I'll tell a quick story. In the early days, when I wrote a book called Truth Vibrations, the first one I ever wrote about anything after I started to wake up, and no one really wanted to know bookshops and stuff, because this was written by this man who's now been ridiculed. But I went to a bookshop in Oxford where the manager was very sympathetic. And he said to me, he said, I've just had a kind of a straw poll, going around the staff. He says, and I reckon about 80% of the people who work, big bookshop, I reckon 80% of the people in that work for this bookshop actually have sympathy with your view of how things are. He said, but none of them knew that 80% of them thought the same, because they were frightened of saying that this is what they believed in, because they feared the reaction of others. And as a result of that, this was locked into them. And if only some people had spoken their truth, then somebody, actually I agree with that. I thank God someone else is saying it. This is why it's so important. We do not concede to fear of what other people think. We do not concede to fear of what they will say about us or whatever. It doesn't matter, because they'll think something else tomorrow. People who now, to their credit, accept that years ago they ridiculed me and laughed at me, they're now reading my books. Because if I'd have conceded to fear, I wouldn't have written the books, they wouldn't be reading them now. This is why, what is our truth, okay? Speak it, live it. And that's how we change things, not by keeping our heads down, because that doesn't change anything.